And welcome back, everybody, to Picks on Politics. My next guest, Deputy Mayor Ann Williams-Isom, who's really been the face of the mayor's task force in handling the migrant crisis, and a lot to talk about. So welcome back to Picks on Politics, Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Dan.
Let's talk about this. The mayor described these as extremely painful cuts to what New York City and New York City residents will face. I want to throw this up on the screen. 4,000 fewer police officers, no new school safety agents, less sanitation services, library hours cut. The question becomes, is this just the beginning, and are there more to come after that?
It's funny that you asked that question because the mayor actually has been saying this for months. And in some ways, I wonder if people haven't been hearing what he's saying, that we're going to really face tough decisions as we're moving forward. And unfortunately, yes, this is just the beginning. And unless we get the support that we need from state and federal partners, we think that we're going to be in a very bad situation here in New York City.
So I want to talk about the state and federal partners in just a second, but I want to get your reaction to what the city council is saying about this, because they really need to approve these cuts, right?
Yep.
So this was their statement. The council speaker saying that the administration response in providing services for asylum seekers has relied far too much on expensive emergency contracts, which for profit companies that cost the city billions of dollars. What is your response to that?
I actually saw that, and I thought that they have an interesting point. I think when you're at the beginning of an emergency, you have to use a lot of different approach. I think that 18 months into it, we already have been thinking about where are the places where we can cut costs.
Okay.
We're going to be cutting the asylum seeker cost by 20%. And this idea of really using more nonprofits, relying more on community-based organizations, more faith-based organizations, I think is a really great idea, and it's what we're going to be looking to do.
So what are those cuts then? Our Henry Rossoff did ask the mayor last week at a press conference about if there was going to be cuts to migrant services. You just alluded to about 20%. So what does that look like?
It means that we could look at some of the how we've been housing people. It can look to exactly what we were talking about, working closer with community-based organizations. It could be looking to the food services, the security services, how much case management, the staffing. We're going to look at everything. I think that if we're asking New Yorkers and all of our agencies to make tough choices, we think that we need to do that for the asylum seekers also.
I spoke to the public advocate just a couple days ago about this issue. He said that perhaps you should be looking at nonprofit avenues. Is that something you are looking at?
We're all on the same page with that. And I do think that at the beginning of a crisis, when you need to do something quickly, you stand up certain things like the Hercs and the way that we did it. I think now that we kind of know that this is where we're going to be in terms of the migration, but I don't want to let the federal government off the hook. If we had the support that we needed with 3,000 people still coming here, Dan, over 140,000 people coming to New York City. I think when I was here in August, there were 58,000 people. We're now at the 65,000 asylum seekers that we're taking care of. New Yorkers can understand that doesn't make any sense.
So I feel like you've always been real with the real talk here about the issue and laying it all out. So the mayor candidly laying out, as you have, that people could be forced out onto the streets, right? What exactly does that look like?
So what I think we're trying to communicate is that there's only a certain amount of tools that we have as the city government. So we have to do time limits. We didn't want to do time limits. We thought that we would have more support. The state would be able to resettle more people right now. We know that it's tough to try to find housing. We thought the federal government would come in and do a decompression strategy. So it means that after 30 days for single adults and adult families, we're going to have to say you can be reticketed or go someplace else. That's why it's so important for us to lean into our case management, our legal clinics. We've done over 10,000 applications already. All of those strategies to help people move along on their journey.
And the reticketing, though, that is to leave the system and then come back into it, right?
Well, I think the reticketing is to move on to the next place where you want to be. Think about this for a minute. We're 18 months into this crisis. We're seeing this in Massachusetts, in Chicago, in Denver. People are finding community. People are finding options in other parts of the country. We think that if the federal government got involved and more coordinated that more, it would be easier. But people are finding their way to other places. Right,
but when you look at some of those other cities, they do involve folks sleeping on the streets, sleeping in tents. Now, the mayor has said that that is a reality, right? So when is it a reality? When are we going to see people sleeping on the streets? And again, what exactly does that look like?
So I think, again, we have been and you're right, the Massachusetts has gotten up to 7,500 people and said that they can no longer, they're putting families on a wait list. We see it in Denver, we see Chicago and people in airports. I want New Yorkers to feel proud of what we've done so far, but to understand that we have to do the time limits that we have, that they're going to see places like Floyd Bennett Field, and that we're going to do our best to give people other options. But if you have to leave the system, you're going to have to leave the system. We're hoping that people don't sleep on the streets, that they find another place to go. But if they don't find another place to go, I think that's what the mayor's trying to prepare us for, that at some point there's got to be an end.
And that reality could be sleeping on the street. The question becomes, is there tents provided for those, right, for those asylum seekers who are then going to say, well, I have no option but to sleep on the street?
What I'm focusing on right now is cutting the asylum seeker budget and making sure that we get people moved on their way, getting as many exits out of the system. The tricky part, Dan, has been that our intakes are outpacing our exits. We want to get some help there from the federal government, from our state, and then we think that maybe we can avoid people sleeping on the streets because we're able to really get people out quicker. If that doesn't happen, New York City is going to do the best that they can. We need others to step up so we can avoid people sleeping on the streets.
I'm out of time here, but I do want to ask, what is that conversation? And the mayor missed the meeting in D.C. with the mayors of the other cities who attended. What does aid look like at this point? What are the conversations?
The conversations have been actually ongoing. That wasn't the first meeting that the mayors had with the other mayors in other cities. And we're actually, I think there's another meeting scheduled today amongst the mayors to really look at best practice, to talk about joint advocacy, and to continue to work together to say this is a national crisis, so it should have a national solution.
All right, Deputy Mayor Williams-Isom, I appreciate you being here. Happy belated birthday to you, because your birthday was last Friday.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. You're welcome back to keep us posted anytime, okay?
Thank you.